Join the team.
Oh man, that would be bad if that box fell over into the fire. That is not what I want to happen. Let's do this! Hey team, this is the McGuire Review, and we have a brand new one from WizKids game called Hako Ona. We got here. This is a really, really cool game. You can see there isn't a ton of different components that are on the board, but they have found ways to utilize the minimal amount of components and the small footprint that this game offers in a big way. And we'll see that here as we kind of go through the mechanics of the game and how this game plays out, because it does have some really, really cool different mechanics, specifically with how the noise mechanic works in this game. Out of these little components right here, we'll take a look at here in just a second. But first, this is a 90-minute game. It is a 14 plus on age range and 3 to 5 players. Now, the only thing that I will call out real quick before we get started is this is a horror-based game. It's a Japanese game that's going through a few different, I believe, variations and prints. And WizKids picked it up for an English translation and brought it to the US because they thought it was such a cool game. And I will have to admit, it is a very, very unique, creepy, horror-based game. And that's what it is. I want to make sure that's very clear. This is technically considered a horror-based game. Now, I will make a few statements here on a couple little controversial things. Actually, just one, really, in my opinion. There is an item in this game called the Ouija board. If you don't want to introduce your kids or your family or anybody else playing this game to the Ouija board item, obviously it's not a Ouija board, it's just a item card that's called the Ouija board, and it has a specific power on it. There are lots of different items and powers in the game that you can get as a player, and you only play with one of them, okay? So that's important. It isn't like you're continuing to gain these cards over the course of the game. You select one from the very beginning, and that is the power of the card that you have for the game as a player. So you can choose just to not use this card if you don't want to. I generally don't use this card, so I just toss it out, and I use whatever cards are left. Now, there are standard item cards, and then there are also the advanced item cards, and we'll get to those here in a second. So there's quite a few different options to choose from, and frankly, you kind of randomize those in the beginning and draw one. You might not even get it over the course of a few games, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. Okay, that's all I'll say about that. I don't want it to taint this game in any way, because the game and the mechanics of this game are a lot of fun, and I don't want that to taint it at all, okay? I'm just not down with the Ouija boards. Okay, I think what we'll do here is we'll run through kind of the basic setup of what's on the table and what these different components are quickly. I'm not going to get deep into how to go through all the different setup rules, because there's quite a few different things you're going to do when you perform setup, specifically with these little tokens here that have the little eyeballs on them and how they get placed on this board. You will essentially organize them all, and I do recommend that just when you pop them all out or when you get them all out of the game, flip them all face up. It's not going to be something where they're all going to be face down. Flip them all face up and kind of organize them. Put the items with the items, put the weaknesses with the weaknesses, put the empty tiles over to the side. Get them all organized, because you'll need it that way when you go through setup, and it'll make it that much quicker. Now, they did include in the box some extra plastic baggies to store all this stuff back in. That's good as well. Love seeing that. And again, love the small form factor that this game comes with. It travels well, and it is a lot of fun. So what is this game about? One player is going to be the Hako Ona player and is going to be kind of the game master of the game. You're going to control the speed and the pace of the game. You're going to control how hard that game is for the players. The more and more someone is the Hako Ona player and plays that player, the better they're going to get. And the easier it's going to be for them to kill visitors, probably, especially if they're new players. So you do want to kind of balance that when you're playing the game. If you're a very experienced Hako Ona player, you might want to take it a little bit easier for a while to let the players, essentially experience more and more of the game. Because I will say, and it calls this out right in the rule book, that this game is balanced more on the side of the Hako Ona player. The Hako Ona player is a very powerful player and has very powerful abilities, and if they play the plays right, they make their moves right, they put themselves in the right room of this board, they can kill players very quickly. So I will call out, and that's just in the scaling of this game. I think when you start this game and everybody's kind of new to it, it's going to be very, very balanced. It's going to be a lot of fun. But the more and more someone plays that Hako Ona player, the more it can be unbalanced towards that player if they really know what they're doing. So just understand that the more and more you play this game. I like to talk about that when we get into these reviews. Games need to scale, and with this one specifically, the player that's taking on Hako Ona needs to understand if they're really good and they have new players and new visitors, they're going to need to probably play it a little light for a while to get those players up to speed, so then it feels like a really good experience as you go over the course of the game. Okay, so we do have one player that's the Hako Ona player, and everybody else is basically a visitor player, and they're sort of working together. There is information that can be shared when players are in the same room. I've got a two-player game set up here. There's the two pawns, the blue and the green, and you'll move around the game board over the course of the game, and you'll do different things. You'll either move, you will use items, you will peek at different shadow tiles, they call them in this game, to see what's under them. And those are the things you're going to do when it's your turn. But whenever you're in the same room together, you'll be able to do some other types of things like share information, show each other your tiles, things from that perspective that you don't want necessarily the Hako Ona player to actually see which tiles you have acquired and which items you have. And that becomes more important the more you play this game. All right, the overall flow of the game before we get into the components is essentially going to follow a player's turn trying to not make any noise. And we'll talk about this component here in a second, because it really is an awesome implementation of this noise mechanic in this game. I've never seen anything like this, and it's really, really cool. And they actually offer two different variations of how to implement that noise mechanic. We'll talk about that in a second. What you're going to basically do is try to not make noise. If you don't make any noise, you then can take your turn, and then it will be the next player's turn. And it's just going to go player after player after player until someone makes noise. Once they make noise through various different ways, then it will automatically be the Hako Ona player's turn. That player will take their turn, and then it will start again with the player that basically screwed up and made noise before they were able to take their action on their turn. And that really is the flow of the game. The game will end in a multitude of different ways, and I will grab the book here to show how you can win. So the visitors can win in three different ways. Either one, they can escape. To escape, you got to find the secret exit, and you got to have the key ring. But to get the key ring, you got to figure out the combination to the safe. Right? So that'll play out over the course of the game, but if you're able to do that, you can win that way. You can defeat the Hako Ona player, which means you find her weakness. So there's three different items in this game that are a weakness to the Hako Ona player, and that player has selected that secretly at the beginning of the game, and this player went with the chains. Those were the weaknesses for this player, and if another visitor is able to deduce based on finding different items and figuring out that, oh, the chains is her weakness, and then finding her and then using that item on a tile they believe is the Hako Ona player, they can kill the Hako Ona player with those weakness. That is a very difficult way to win, though, however. Because if you're wrong, you actually will discard the tokens as well as the item that you're using, and that may be the item that is the Hako Ona player's weakness. And once it's discarded, it's out of the game, and now you can't win that way. So it is a very risky way to win, but it's possible. It's a little bit difficult, though. Give her rest. You can find the Mary doll. There's one of these tokens that have a doll under it. I believe it's right here in the toilet is where I placed it. Yes, there it is. The doll. And if you get the doll and then you figure out where the bone pile is, and I can't remember exactly where the bones are, but Hako Ona's, when she was alive and she was killed, her pile of bones, if you can find those bones and then show her the doll, put the doll with the bones, you can then give her rest, and then the visitors will win that way as well. So those are three ways the visitors can win. Now, when we come to the Hako Ona player, Hako Ona wins one of two ways. Either one, she's all alone, which means all the visitors have been killed. Now, as visitors are killed, they are turned into Hakabitos. And this little token here will match your color and will go with your player items here when you set up. We'll talk about those in a second. And that little token will get placed on the board if you ever die. So if you see Hako Ona, if you flip one of these tiles over and there's a Hako Ona under it, there's only one in the game, and she will move around, and it's like, oh, I'm going to look in this room, and then I'm going to flip this out. Oh, there she is. you immediately die. If you die, you become a Hakobito. And at that point, you will kind of join the team of the Hako Ona player, and then it will be sort of that way the visitors kind of move to the Hako Ona side over the course of the game. The game may end, there may only be, let's say that there's 4 visitors playing, there may only be 1 or 2 visitors left by the end of the game because other visitors have died and become Hakobitos and kind of moved to her side. Once you become a Hakobito, you're not just out of the game, you continue to play. When it's the Hako Ona's turn, you will also be able to move around the board, and that's essentially what you're going to be doing. You're not going to be using any powers or abilities. You're essentially going to be just moving around the board trying to make the Hako Ona player win, because once you become a Hakobito and you're part of their sort of team, you did die, yes, but by default you would win the game if the Hako Ona player wins. So that's the way that works. And it really gives everybody at the table a feel, and that's, again, the game is sort of unbalanced towards the Hako Ona player, but people don't feel like they just lose over and over again. You do essentially win if you have become a Hakobito, or you win if you're still a visitor and you're alive. So it makes that visitor win really satisfying when you get it, because it is difficult to be able to win the game as visitors, and you do have to work together very strategically to do one of these 3 ways we just went over in being able to win. There is quite a bit of deduction in this game as well. You will deduce things as you play to figure out combinations for the safe, to figure out where different items are that you may need to be able to trap Hako Ona and win the game. Okay, that is the basic flow of the game and how the game works. Another thing I'll point out here mechanic-wise, well, really component-wise, and I'll start right here with the game board, is I did a really nice piece of artwork and a game over that's inside there. And that can be kind of a fun use where when you're playing the game, there's various different phases of the game when it's the Hako Ona player's turn, where the players will actually close their eyes, the rest of the visitors. And the Hako Ona player will be doing things on the board, mainly looking at tiles and moving the Hako Ona player around to different areas to be able to trap the visitors. Because again, once they flip that tile over, if it's the Hako Ona, they die immediately and become a Hakobito. Or if they ever flip over a Hakobito, any other visitor, they're dead as well. So this game over image here can be used at the end of the game when you have all of the players close their eyes. If you know the game is over and you have won, there's nothing else they're able to do. You can kind of hold this up, and when they all open their eyes, you can be creepily looking at them smiling with this little game over box, showing all the visitors that they've lost the game, and the Hako Ona as well as all Hakobito players would be winners at that point. So that's kind of a cool little component I think they did there. I love it when manufacturers make use of the game board in any way possible they can. I think that's cool. So nice use of the of just the lid there for the game. We already went over the rule book. The rule book is well laid out. It's, you know, nice small size. Other than that, it is laid out really well. Text is spaced out well. It's a pretty short little book. We'll hit the other items. Again, there is a few different items that are going to be shuffled up at the beginning of the game, and players will select one. Each player here is select. We got the Shrine Bell, and we got the Suitcase. And those offer different abilities for the player to use over the course of the game. So this one here can seal weaker powers temporarily. It's called the Shrine Bell. You may try to avoid making noise twice by stacking 2 discs one at a time. If you succeed, you may mumble Fukabishi on the next Hako Ona turn, and if you do, the Hako Ona may not set powers of rank B or C. So it just allows the players to have a in-game power that they can use that will stop something the Hako Ona is going to be able to do, or it allows them to do different things. Like this one here, the Suitcase. This is a once-use only, and it's an advanced item. So some of these items are advanced. I did choose to use an advanced item. They do recommend that you just go with the standard items when you first play the game versus using those advanced items. This one you place under the room you are in and place an empty tile face down anywhere in the room. This empty tile is now inside the Suitcase and becomes an extra shadow in the room. This basically allows you just to add to the capacity of a room, but is a one-time use item that you'll go and it'll be laid out, and now that room has an extra shadow space that it can have for the rest of the game. Okay, each of these items does a little something different. I'm not going to go through each one of them. Here we do have the advanced items as well. There are 2 advanced Powers here for Hako Ona. All of these here are the powers that Hako Ona can take over the course of the game. And they will be unlocked and only usable once certain tiles are flipped over by the visitors. So as the visitors are exploring and flipping over tiles, those tiles, some of them will have numbers on them. Those are called the diary numbers or diary tiles. Once they find one of those, they will set that on the card. So if they were to flip over a tile and it said 2, oh, they would go up here and they would, oh, number 2. They would set the tile on number 2. Now number 2 power for Hako Ona is available and able to be used. So that's interesting. As the visitors explore and the game moves on, more and more powers for the Hako Ona player will be unlocked. It's very cool. Okay, here are some advanced powers. They're very powerful. I would not recommend using these at all until you are well-versed at this game. All right, and then we do have a multitude of advanced items as well that are included in the game. Again, these are also very powerful as well, and you're going to want to know really the mechanics and how to play this game. I'd play this game 2 or 3 times before you get into using these advanced items because they are very, very powerful, and they can shorten the game dramatically if they're used strategically in the right point in time. So that's all I'll say about these advanced cards. So just kind of watch that, use those when you know what you're doing. All right. We look at the players. I got another player set up here, the green player back behind the game over box, but we'll leave that there. So here is the blue player, the token right here that they both start off, in this entrance here of 1F Hall. You will select, as we talked about, a single card. There you go. And then you have a visitor summary. These are basically only serve the point of giving you a summary of all the different things that you can do in the game. So it does have how noise works and the various rules with that. It has the actions you're able to take when it's your turn. You can either move, peek, or use an item. One of those, not 2 or any more. You also have a multitude of free actions, which are essentially just if you're in the same room with someone else, you're sharing information. You might even share tiles, things from that perspective. Okay, visitors win. They got the win conditions right there. They had the Hako Ona win conditions right there. And then we have the Hako Ona may interrupt actions with appropriate set powers. So there are powers that can actually interrupt visitor actions as well. And then on the back, there are the different types of tiles and what they do when they're revealed. So it's all the different, essentially all the different types of tiles in the game and what those different types of tiles do. You can read right there. That way, once you start to play the game, after you get your first explanation, it's like, oh, I forgot what this is. Boom, you just read it. Okay, and it's very quick, a sentence, and you know exactly what to do. So the game is very simplistic from that perspective. There's not a lot of rules. It's very simple and very straightforward. Frankly, this video will take way longer than it will to actually explain this game and start to play it. But, I like to talk through the mechanics and let you know how this game really plays out and what you're getting into before you would go to want to spend your money and buy this game. Now, it does come at a pretty low price point. It's a fairly small game, small footprint. It comes at a pretty low price point. However, there's a lot of games out on the market. You don't want to just go out and spend your money on whatever. So I like to talk through these things so you can understand how the game really plays out. And if there are mechanics here that are really going to appeal to you as a player or your gaming group. Okay, we've got our board here, and the board's going to be set out in the very beginning of the game like this. And again, there's going to be kind of a random setup of these different tokens, and then you're going to put these tokens down on the board. We've already gone over the Hako Ona powers here and how those powers work. The only other thing that I will say is some of these cards have a little lock icon on them. You'll see right here. Now, all that means is that so many powers have to be unlocked before that particular power can be used. Open this, it says 5, a little lock icon there. It means that visitors would have had to discover 5 other diary tokens that have unlocked powers before that one could particularly be used. You have to have at least 5 up. All right, the other thing that I'm going to hit here is the Hako Ona setup. Hako Ona has a player board as well that, again, lists out those important tiles, so it's clear to that player what all those things do, as well as how noise works, the actions that the Hako Ona player can take in the order that those actions will be taken, as well as win conditions you have there, and then all of the Hako Ona powers are on the back as well. They're right here out in front, but let's say they were just a little further. Instead of like leaning over the table, you'd be able to just flip over your card there and just quickly read the powers that are available per those different numbers. Because no tokens would ever be set on here, as well as your visitor boards. So those are, easily accessible to flip over Nothing's ever really going to be setting on it. This is the Hako Ona power token or tile, I like to call it here, and it is where you're going to store your single weakness. That's going to go right there. And then this other little area, it says location. It's essentially when you move your Hako Ona player to another area, and then you would have to take that one off. It's just a spot so you can like switch it out. It's basically just a spot where you can kind of switch out tokens on the board as you move around. You jump into that spot, you take that token, and you put it out. Now, the win to that, or the strategy, is once you move into a room, the Hako Ona player can look at all the tokens in that room secretly. Well, if one of those tokens is your weakness, like, for instance, it's chains for me, and I find the chain item, I may want to sit myself where that chain item is, grab the chain, and then put the chain here. Especially if it's near where other players are. And that's different for the players, because when players move into rooms, they can only peek at one of the tiles. They will choose which one they want to peek at. Hako Ona, however, can peek at all of the tiles within a room once she moves in. That allows her to strategically kind of set up, like we talked about, do I take an item and keep that out of play? Because once that item moves off here and I put myself there, it's out of play for the visitors. They can't get it. And I can leave that there as long as I want as I move around. If there's empty shadows I can move into, or I can move into another area and move the item into a different spot of the board that's further away from the players. So that's one of the things that you're going to want to do. Once you figure out, like, oh, there's my weakness item, you better keep an eye on where that item is and kind of track. So there's a little bit of a memory game to this as well. Because, again, you got to remember where you put it and track that and keep it away from the players. So that's kind of the use of that other spot. The other items that we have here is we have two spots that are called set powers. When it is the Hako Ona player's turn, they will have a set number of cards that are in their hand. And if they want to use a power, they can't just say, oh, I'm using this power from my hand. You have to actually choose to set that power, and you can set up to 2 powers. You can only set 1 power or remove a power that's set, only 1 when it's your turn. But once a power is set, then you can use the power later. Maybe it's an interrupt. Maybe it's a power that helps you actually move around the board more effectively. Powers 1 through 4 actually activate kind of moving around the board effectively. The rest of them are either passive powers or they are powers that are called interrupts, which interrupt a visitor when it's the visitor's turn. So that's what this is for. You can set 1 or 2 cards. Then on top here, there's stolen items. So you can steal items over the course of the game as well. Anything that's a stolen item will be put up here as well. You will start the game with 1 card in your hand. Doesn't necessarily mean you can use it, because it says here the phone rings. Well, the phone rings is item number 10. That tile hasn't been turned over yet, so I actually can't even use this power yet. It just is in my hand, and I'll hold it until it's available and to be able to be used. The only thing that we have left here is our few components that we have out front. These are the empty tiles, so as we remove tiles from the board, let's say they're items, players would then replace a shadow, one of these shadow boxes, which is just a box that's under one of these tiles. Each one does have a name. They'll replace it with an empty tile, and they'll put that down, which again, can trip you up over the course of the game, because if you don't remember where you've placed, all the visitors don't remember where they've placed empty tiles, they may spend a turn peeking at something that's an empty tile. Oh, shoot, right? It was an empty tile. All right, that's what these are going to be used for. Everything else you're going to see here is used for the sound, or the noise mechanic, which is just phenomenally implemented. So this is how this works. You've got this little tile right here, and it's just basically got numbers around the outside, and it's got this little pearl sort of bead glued onto it. And how that's going to work is you're going to set that down, and then depending on the difficulty of the game, and there are 3 different types of difficulty: normal, hard, and nightmare, I believe. You're going to place these discs in different configurations, these little wooden discs around this, right next to the numbers. And then when it's your turn, you're going to start at the lowest number that's still there, which for the first turn it would be 1. And you're going to do a dexterity mechanic where you're going to stack this on top of the little white bead. And it's however you want to do it, but it has to be touching the white bead. Okay? And if it didn't fall off the white bead, okay, I didn't make any noise. I now, as a visitor, can take my turn. Now, when it's the next visitor's turn, before they do anything, they're going to take the next disc, and they're going to try to set it on top of this disc. Oh, and it is very difficult. Well, it slipped off, which means I made noise. At that point, it is now immediately the Hako Ona player's turn, and they will now take their turn, and then it will go back to the visitors, and then it will be the visitors' turn again to take that next first turn. Well, you'll go ahead and reset. You won't start from there. You always reset. And now it's that visitor's turn to try to execute again. Now, you may think, wow, that's really hard, and it's probably going to be every other turn it's going to be the Hako Ona turn. Not necessarily, because as visitors get better and better at that dexterity piece, or how they want to stack those tiles there, they'll get better and better. Now, to get all five, for 5 turns to go through without the Hako Ona player getting a turn, at that point, it would just automatically be the Hako Ona turn after that if we were able to get 5. That is slim to none. That would hardly ever happen, but it is possible. The only other thing I'll call out is the red ones have also a little bead on them, which makes it harder. And you can either stack that bead facing up or you can stack it facing down. And it's usually effective to stack it facing down because you can use that bead to kind of hook on the edge of another one of these tokens and then give yourself another flat surface to set the next disc on. You also can do something called passing on your turn. So let's say it's your turn. Let's say you suck at the decks and you're like, I don't want to screw this up and we need more player turns. What you can do is you can just take one of the discs and hold it and you do nothing else. And then it's the next player's turn. You can only do that if it's on the black colored discs. You cannot skip or pass on the red disc. So if it is your turn and it's a red disc is the next one, you gotta go. You gotta go try to stack it and to take your turn. You can't pass. And that's how the noise dexterity mechanic works. Now, for the players that don't necessarily want to do that dex, some players are like, I suck at dex games, or this is too hard, I can't do it. Or let's say you're playing with kids and they're just going to screw it up every time. What you can do is you can play with these noise cards, which essentially you set these out in I think it's a 2x3 grid. You set them out in a grid. I never actually played with the cards. I will, however, tell you something mathematically about these cards, and that may dictate whether you want to use these cards or use the dexterity. The cards go out in a grid, and you basically would flip a card. And they have numbers on them, okay? 0 through 5. Once you get 11 or higher, it automatically triggers the Hako Ona's player's turn. Now, the only thing with that is it guarantees the visitors 3 turns before Hako Ona will ever go. Well, that isn't necessarily the case when we come to the dexterity. And frankly, once the Hako Ona player gets to be really, really good, that may be a strategic thing for the visitors to do, is use the noise cards. Because again, based on the numbers that are on the bottom of these cards, you will have to flip at least 3 of them before it will be the Hako Ona player's turn, and you've made enough noise. So you'll get 3 visitors' turn before Hako Ona will ever go. Where on this, you could screw up on the very first one. You could set this on the bead and it could slip off and fall. That's you made noise. It would be the Hako Ona player's turn. So you will find that you will probably the first few rounds of the game only go 2, maybe 3 turns before Hako Ona will be taking the turn until you get better and better at stacking those little discs, because you're sitting on that little bead, so you're always at an angle. You always have to kind of watch and try to stack those in a way where it doesn't tip over. It is very difficult. But what a fantastic way to implement that noise mechanic in this game in such a small little form factor use of components. WizKids nailed it on that. All right, that is all the components that we have here out on the table. We did talk about these. Well, let's talk about these cards. These cards are the cards that you will draw when it's the Hako Ona player's turn. We'll talk about what that looks like. You will draw these cards. And there is one special card at the end. It's called Time of Despair. It'll allow you to draw a couple more of these cards into your hand. And that only happens at the very end. So it sits at the very bottom of the deck and just allows you to kind of speed up the powers that are getting float into your hand. If, in fact, the power is unlocked. When you draw one of these cards, if you look at the power, and that power isn't unlocked, it goes right to the bottom of the deck. You don't get to keep it. You only get to keep it in your hand if it's a power that's been unlocked by the visitors, and then you can choose to set it out into your board when it's your turn to then be activated when it's your turn. Okay? So that's how that works. Let's talk about the visitor's turn. It's very, very simple here. There's only 3 different actions you can take after you've successfully done your dex check and you haven't made any noise. You then can either move, which is simply just taking your pawn and moving into another room. That's it. That would be the extent of your turn. Okay, there's only 1 action you can take on your turn. And then you're going to do some things in that room upon your next turn unless you want to keep moving. All right, that's move. You can peek, which means if you're in a room that has a tile that has the little eyeball there, it's not just an empty shadow space. You then can look at that and you can peek at it. Okay, and you are the only person that would look at that, and depending on what it is, like if it was an item, you would keep it. Well, it is. It's the chains. If we remember, the chains is the Hako Ona player's weakness. So this player has right off the bat, and again, it was random when these got placed out there. It was just sheer luck. They've right off the bat gotten the item that is the Hako Ona player's weakness and will kill the Hako Ona player. Now, these visitors don't know that. They don't know that's the weakness, but it could be the weakness. So you're going to take that item and you're going to keep it. Now, I could take a free action. Let's say if that was my action to peek, I didn't move. For free, I could show the rest of the visitors, hey, I've got the chains. Now, you might not want to actively tell the Hako Ona player that. You may just want to say, hey, look, got the chains item. Okay, we know player blue has the chain item, and you can keep that. You'll just keep that face down. All right. The last thing you can do is use an item. Each item has its own rules. So you can actually use an item that you have. That may be an item that you have on a card. Some of them are reusable. If they are not reusable, they will state one-time use. Once you use them, they're kind of out of the game. The Shrine Bell here is a reusable item, and it has to do with making noise. Or it may be an item that is on a token that you have found, and it's used in a specific way. Like if you have the doll, you can say, oh, I'm using it to give to the bones to set Hako Ona at peace and win the game. So that's how those items are used. And that's it. It's as simple as it gets from a visitor's perspective. You either move, peek, or you use an item. Now when it comes to the Hako Ona's player's turn, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to point to a room that they are in. And it has to be the room they're in. So for the game to start here, I have placed the Hako Ona players. They do have to start in one of these 2 grudge rooms, either the red room or the kids' bedroom as part of the startup. I've chose to start inside the drawers in the kids' bedroom. And it's a little token here that's got the Hako Ona player's image on it. And I would have to point to a room and scream. Now, it is kind of fun if the player that's the Hako Ona player thematically goes with that, like, ah! Like points to a room and actually screams. It's kind of thematically a little creepy, and it is kind of fun. So I would, first turn, I would be pointing either the kids' bedroom or the red bedroom. So I would point to that room and I would scream. Ah! Now all the visitors know that Hako Ona is in the kids' bedroom. Doesn't know which one of these tiles they're under, but they're in the kids' bedroom. So again, be careful. You don't want to go find it, because if you flip it over, you immediately die and become a Hakabito. I will call out also, there is a second floor hall and there is a basement. That's why these tiles are separated from the rest of the board. And this is the safe. So this is the kind of the first floor, and then this is the second floor, and this is the basement that you can travel through. And there's various different areas on these different tiles that will allow you to take a staircase to get down to those other areas. So the Hako Ona player is going to point to a room and scream. The Hako Ona player is then going to draw a card. And obviously, they're going to look at this card and it says number 3. Well, number 3 is not unlocked, so number 3 goes to the bottom of the deck. That's it. That's all that can be done. Hako Ona does have a card that is in their hand, and they can set that card if they want. They can set the power to have it ready to go, but it's not going to be able to be activated if it isn't unlocked, if one of those diary tokens haven't been found. Okay, they've screened, they've drawn a card. If they were able to keep it or not based on what's been unlocked, they're then going to be able to set powers into the board, regardless if they can use them or not. If they're ready to go, they can set them in, and then all the rest of the visitors are going to close their eyes. And it is important that their visitors keep their eyes closed, because if they don't, it's going to kind of ruin the fun of the game. If you're peeking, you're going to watch where the Hako Ona player is moving their Hako Ona token, and you're always going to know where that is. And that's not going to make the game very fun. So all players and visitors are closing their eyes, and the Hako Ona player is now going to start to activate Powers 1 through 4, those are type movement type powers. So they're activating those powers if in fact they have them set and they were available and they're unlocked and they are set. They're activating powers and then they are moving around the board. They're doing something that we talked about a little bit earlier where they're taking tokens and moving them off. If they're going into a different spot that already has a token, they're going to move around, okay? So that's how that's going to work. It's the same rules as visitors. The Hako Ona player can only move up to one room away. So again, you know, right from the beginning of the game, you are going to feel like you're right on her tail because you start here and you can either go here and she can be here, or you can go here and she can be here. But over the course of the game, she'll move around. You will feel like you're somewhat chasing and or kind of running from her because, again, you don't want to find her. You do not want to flip the tile that she's in. So if you know she's in this room, you may want to go over here and start flipping tiles because you know that's not going to be a tile that's going to kill you immediately. So that's how that's going to work. Very, very simple. She's going to move. All right. After she has moved, her turn is then over and the visitors will now all open their eyes and everything will kind of reset. So the noise will reset because after her turn, the noise always resets no matter where it is. And then her turn is over. Now, she may have some interrupt powers that she set into her card ready to go and ready to interrupt upon the next round of the visitor's turn. And that's going to be a smart move for the Hako Ona player to do. And the Hako Ona player has to be very strategic, much more strategic than the visitors need to be. The visitors, and this is what's fun about this game, the visitors have more of a tactical reaction experience through their game. It's not a lot of strategy, it's more tactical reaction. The Hako Ona player has more of a strategic gameplay. They're thinking about how do I set and get powers ready to interrupt on the player's next turns? How do I set powers and have things ready to do more movement maybe on my next turn? So it's a much more strategic game from the Hako Ona player's turn. That's what makes this game reusable and fun, is you might play the game a few times as a visitor and then you want to play it as the Hako Ona player and get a little bit more of a strategic game out of this title. It's also a game that will bring you back to the table a number of times because after you play this game again, it is a horror-based game, but it is a little creepy. And if you have a Hako Ona player that thematically really gets into this game and doesn't talk and just weirdly looks at you, shakes yes or shakes no, or holds up the little box or makes little weird faces or actually screams when they point to the room, you really can get some kind of jump scares and some creepy moments out of this game where a few days later you're like, ooh, I want to play me some Hako Ona again. Yeah, Bear wants to play. And with that, Bear, load up the overhead cam and get an overview of all of the components in the game that we've got out here because we've kind of gone over everything and we've gone over how all the mechanics of this game work. What we'll do just for fun here is we will play out one little round of gameplay because it'll go pretty quick. So we're going to start here with the blue player, and for their turn, let's say they already played out. They peeked, okay? They peeked at these. They found the chains. They showed the green player, hey, we got the chains. Okay, we got that. That was their turn. It's now the green player's turn. All right, and let's say with that blue player, they already, had their single noise that they had stacked up. Oh, wow. And that's where it is. Now it's the green player's turn. So the green player, the first thing you're going to have to do is try to not make any noise. Oh, this is going to be difficult. All right, so we're going to go here. Okay, I got it. All right. Now there's another rule. If at any point in time the Hako Ona player bumps the table or causes that to fall, it will not be the Hako Ona player's turn. The sound will reset, and the last player will try to set their thing again. If a player ever bumps the table or anything else happens that makes that fall, at any point in time during the play, it is the Hako Ona player's turn. So that's another rule you got to be careful with. You don't want people like bumping the table and like, oh, okay? You're going to give the advantage to the Hako Ona player, right? That's one thing with kids as well. That's why sometimes the cards work better because you don't run into that mechanic. I was able to do it, and you can see that next one stack is going to be incredibly difficult. So the green player is going to go up here to the second floor, and that's all they're going to be able to do because again, you can't move and then peek. I moved. That's what I chose to do. All right, now it is back to the blue player's turn. And the blue player cannot pass because it is the red token. So let's see. I'm probably going to want to stack this upside down like this, using this bead to hang off the back side of this one. I screwed it up. All right, that's it. It fell. Okay, now if at any point in time this top one falls but nothing else falls, you can try again. But it did cause another token to topple. It's done. The noise has been made. Hako Ona player is now activated. So the blue player did not get to go again. So again, the first thing the Hako Ona player is going to do, it's the first round of the game, and we know that we're here. Ah! Right? We're gonna point this room and scream. Now the players know Hako Ona is in the kids' bedroom. Now the Hako Ona player is going to draw a card. Look at the card close to you, number 1. That tile hasn't been peeked yet. It goes to the bottom of the stack. And now we can look at our hand. Okay, we've got the phone rings, but again, we can't use it. Now at this point, all visitors are going to close their eyes. We're going to set powers and cards. We can also remove up to 1 power card that's been set. There's really no reason to do anything at this point. I'm not going to set anything. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to actually move. So this player is probably not going to move here. They might move up into the red bedroom, but I can't get there. I'm going to move into the kitchen. So I can move up to 1 away. So now that I'm in the kitchen, I can look at all of these tiles. And there's a 1 for the combination safe. There's a can of gasoline, and there is like a door. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to go inside a large wooden crate. We're going to go right. We're going to go right here, and we're going to take one of the lock numbers, because the numbers are 1 through 6, and once you get a certain number of these, you'll know what's left here, and you don't have to guess in order. It doesn't have to, like my combination is 6, 3, 2. A visitor doesn't have to say 6, 3, 2. They can just say 2, a 3, and a 6. Yep. That's the combination safe, and once they get that, the Hako Ona player will hand them the keys because they've unlocked the safe. Again, it's never one of the win conditions. If you have the keys and you find the secret exit, you're out of there. Okay, and that door that we just looked at, that is the secret exit. So I'm going to leave it there for now. That's okay, and I'm going to go with picking up this 1 combination, and I'm going to go ahead and place this. I can choose to kind of switch these around, or I'm gonna put this one here, and I'm gonna put this location one here. That's where everything is moved, and now I've moved, and now the players would open their eyes. Now players don't know that I've moved. Now if they pay close attention, and this is one of the things you want to make sure you do, a keen eye will watch these things, and it's that one got moved a little bit, or that one got moved a little bit. Be careful as the Hako Ona player to. This is kind of where your dex comes in. Make sure you get all these back right exactly where they were. Or, right exactly where they were. So you're not tipping off the players on where you've moved. So the Hako Ona player is now right here. Okay? It's now reset, and now it's back to the players' turns, and now we would start with the blue player again. Obviously let's see what I may want to use my item here, because my item is, you may try to avoid making noise twice by stacking 2 discs 1 at a time. If you succeed, you may mumble. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. I'm going to go ahead and use this item. But using the item is one of my actions, so I'm not going to be able to do anything else. Essentially, all this does is ensure that the Hako Ona may not set powers of rank B or C. Actually, I'm not going to do that. It'd be better if a mid or end game move, because rank B or C, they don't have any of them yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my normal turn. I'm going to stack it, and boom, I was able to do it. I'm now going to move. And I know that she was there, so she can't be there. So I'm going to move into this area right here. It's the only thing I can do. Upon my next turn, I'll then get to peek. It is now the green player's turn. The green player is going to start with this and try to stack. Ho, 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 and he was able to do it. I am now going to peek at inside of the suit of armor, and I find a 3. This is a diary token. So now immediately I place it on power number 3, and that power locked door is now activated for the Hako Ona player. Once they receive the locked door card, then they can set it, and they can actually get to that power now. This is one of the things that really scales this game. It's why it's a 90-minute game. It is very simple, and you might think, oh, I just move, I peek, I move, I peek, I move, I peek. But there's a certain portion of this game where as you're moving and peeking, you're unlocking, you're building the powers of the Hako Ona player up more and more and more and more. And it takes time to be able to do that. So the game does really scale and step in as you play it, and it gets more advanced as you play it. So it's very simple for new players to really get into. Okay, it's now back to the blue player's turn. We cannot pass. We're at the red disc. I'm going to try to stack this facing up this time versus facing down. Oh, and it fell again. Okay, I made noise, and now I couldn't do anything on my turn, so I couldn't peek, and it's back to the Hako Ona's player's turn. All right, that's where we'll stop the demo. That's essentially the mechanics and the gameplay of how this game works. Again, it's a lot of fun, and really it is a horror-based game, again, if the Hako Ona player plays that more thematic approach. But you can even cut all that out and just play the game, right? You don't have to, you just say, I'm here. You don't have to scream. You can just be like, we're here. So you can play it that way as well. You can really play this game however you want, but if you want that creepy horror-type thematic feel, this game comes with a big punch of that with a very, very small factor game. It's a cool game. Great job, WizKids, bringing this one in. So hit that like, hit the subscribe button, join the team. Keep rolling them crits. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time, Bear. Let's go. Ah!